Hey, what's up everyone, my name is Sagar. I hope that you all are doing great. This is my first ever PC build and I'm really excited to share it with you guys. So well, let's get right to it. All the products that I've used in this video are linked in the description below, so make sure you go check those out as well. Let us start off with the motherboard and the CPU. I chose the Mortar V550M motherboard from MSI and the AMD Ryzen 7 3700X processor. This comes with a stock heatsink with thermal paste applied to it. Gently lift the lever on the socket and look for the golden triangle on the processor and align it with the triangle on the socket. We do not want to push it in. Just place it gently and it will fall in place. Now pull the lever slowly and snap in its place. Moving on to the Wraith Prizm cooler. First, align the cooler onto the processor and make sure the AMD logo is facing in the right direction. And then pull the metal strip and lock it on the board. Now on the other side, pull this lever all the way down and lock it firmly onto the board. Note that you will have to use considerable amount of force, and yes, that is a bit scary. Then connect the CPU cooler to the CPU fan head on the motherboard. Next up, memory sticks. I will be using two 16GB CORSAIR LPX 3200MHz RAMs. Open the two slots, in my case it is the A2 and B2 slots, and then push down from both the sides until you hear the locking sound. Make sure you read the motherboard manual to confirm the RAM slots. Moving on to the storage. I will be using 512GB M.2 form factor SSD from Adata, which will go into the M.2 slot on the board. First, remove the heatsink of the SSD from the motherboard. Tilt the SSD to about 30 degrees and gently push it into the slot. Once that is done, place the heatsink on it and screw it in. Now let us open the case. I use the Allen key which was provided with the case to loosen the screws and then remove them with my hands. Remove the acrylic sheet or the tempered glass and place it somewhere safe. Place the case flat onto the table. Now we are ready to put our board inside the case. The board that I am using is of the micro ATX size. If you own an ATX board, then look for the letter A on your case and align your board accordingly. I will be looking for the letter M and aligning my board accordingly. All the standoffs were pre-installed in this case. Then we will just screw the board in place. Do not forget to install your I/O shield first. For this particular motherboard, the I/O shield is integrated with the board, so I don't have to do that extra step. You can see that I've already attached the power supply cable to the motherboard. You may do it later, it is completely up to you. Now comes the heart of the PC, that is the power supply. I went with the CORSAIR RM750, which is a 750 watt 80 plus gold certified fully modular power supply. Let's connect the PCIe connector to the power supply. Also, notice that I'm connecting the blank side to the power supply, as the labeled side would help us to identify the cables when connecting them to the motherboard later on. Next up is the PC power cable, which will go in just like that. Then we have the SATA power cable, which we will connect to the peripheral and SATA port on the PSU. Let's talk about the graphics card. I chose the RTX 2060 Super from MSI for this build. It is a powerful graphics card which will give a decent gaming experience and faster render time. Just push the graphics card into the first slot which is closest to the CPU. Remove the brackets from the case to make space for the graphics card. Ensure that it is locked in place and then screw it firmly to the case. Grab the power supply and place it on the rubber pads such that the fan is facing downwards. Once placed, screw it in tightly. For additional storage, I opted for a 2TB HDD from Seagate. Fit it to the sliding rack and slide it in place until you hear a locking sound. Then screw in the hard disk with the case firmly to ensure that no vibrating noise would produce during the running time. Okay, now let us open the back plate. Unscrew these two screws and slide the plate backwards and then pop it out. Let us connect all the power cables now. First, the PCIe cable which goes in like this. Then locate the CPU port on your board and plug the cable in. I couldn't show it in this video as it was cramped inside and did not have a clear angle to take the shot. Now guide the SATA power cable and connect it to the hard disk like this. Then comes the data transfer cable. Connect the angled end to your hard disk and the flat end to the SATA port on the motherboard. Also, make sure you do not bend this cable a lot as it carries the data. Next, let's connect the USB 3.1 cable which comes with the case to the board. Next up are the front panel connectors. Connect the power LED, power switch, HDD LED and reset switch as such. Then connect the audio pin to the motherboard. Finally, we will be installing the fans. The air will be sucked in from the front of the case and expelled from the top and back of the case. Just place them like this and screw it in tightly. Let's install the acrylic sheet back in. Now it's time to peel the protector off the sheet. Alright, now is the moment of truth.
Yes, it is alive.
Let's just take a moment and look at this beautiful machine. Hit the B-roll. Alright, moving on to the performance test. First, we will be running GTA 5 at the highest possible settings and see how it performs. So we were getting around 60 to 70 FPS on average, which is pretty good. On the other hand, Counter-Strike was averaging at around 200 to 300 FPS, which is more than enough. So as you can see, it is performing really well at 1440p with decent frame rates, and the temperatures are also optimal. Now let us do some 3D rendering. I will be using the BMW benchmark test on Blender. The CPU took 3 minutes and 5 seconds while the GPU completed the task in under 32 seconds, which is definitely a major upgrade from my laptop. Alright, before we wrap this video, I would just like to say thank you so much if you made it this far, and if you like my content, a like would be great and a sub would mean a lot to me. Well, thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one.